First of all, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for following us live on Facebook. My name is Gianpietro Balia. I'm a programmer for the Black Nights Film Festival, and I'll be hosting this interview. I'm not sure the microphone is actually working. So I'll be hosting the interview, and I would like you to introduce yourselves and introduce your films. But first of all, let me remind that today we have the screenings of the two films. They're both competing for the main competition at our festival. And we have, first of all, Something Useful, Turkish film by Pelin Esmer. It's an international premiere. The film has already been to Istanbul and got the Fipreshi award. It'll be screening today at 6 p.m. in Cosmos Cinema. So whoever still hasn't bought the ticket and has the time to go and check it out, that'd be great. And then we have an American film as well competing for the main competition, Newly Single by Adam Christian Clark. And the film will be screening at 9 p.m. again at the Cosmos Cinema, same cinema. So you can just watch the first one and stay and watch the second one as well. To binge watching. So that's enough from my side. I would like you to introduce yourselves and to maybe give a brief introduction to what your film is about, where it's coming from, and then we can take it from there.
Esmer, I'm the director of Something Useful, which will be screened in 2 hours, so hopefully it's sold out. It's hard to speak to a director what the film is about, because if we know, we can't make it. But I could say it's about life, actually. I'm not trying to escape, but I mean it. We are talking about death, trying to evaluate about death, imagine what it is like. And the only way to understand it for us, for me, was to talk about life. So we wrote a story about a poet woman who meets a young nurse on the train, and it's a long night train, where during this journey we learn that this young girl is actually going to a man who asks for something very difficult that I'm not going to say here. And it's kind of an interesting journey of these two women with this man who is asking something very special from this young woman. And we wanted to write a nice afternoon of this trio. So basically, yeah, if you want to see a movie talking about life, come.
Adam?
All right. Hi, my name's Adam Christian Clark, and I'm here with the movie called Newly Single. As you stated, it's an American film. I agree, it's very hard to describe a movie that you wrote or directed. It's, on a broad sense, it's a dark comedy. It's about modern dating. I don't know that that's primarily what it's about. I think primarily it's a movie about a guy who's delusional and being very self-destructive and sort of desperately holding on to old ideas of masculinity in order to stay relevant in the world, and that ultimately is not working out so well for him at his own expense, comedically at times. So that's the best I can give right now.
Clearly, by these two small synopses, let's say, of the films, they are two very different films. But as I've already watched the films, clearly, I can tell that there are some similarities in a way. I don't think I'm going to spoil the film if I say that your film starts with the character running. So we see the character running in the streets of at night, and we have a train trip. So when it comes to dating in your film, for example, that's a sort of a trip that the character goes through. Not just a physical trip, but also like a personal trip, journey. Let's call it journey, like a personal journey in the dating, in the modern dating world. And as you said, it's a dark comedy. It's very funny, and it's very also. It makes you think a lot, also to where we got to nowadays, and how complicated it has become, also to not only date, but to feel comfortable and confident in doing so, and to finding your own direction. And on the same level, one might say that when the main character of your film goes back in time, let's say by taking the train to go back to the high school times or reunions, that's again another trip with more unexpected twists and turns, let's say, going there.
A strange station to stop at.
Exactly. So when it comes to the journey, could you please develop a little bit more this topic and what it means for you, Adam, the journey of the character, and how did you envision this journey, and while developing the story and the ups and downs of the character, what did you have in mind? Where did it come from? Did you have some social media or some influences from modern society, television? What was it that put you in this position?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, the movie Newly Single is very much about a journey. The main character, Aster, is in a very transitional state. There's certainly like autobiographical aspects of that movie, and I don't think anybody's going to deny that. The person that I'm playing it's like a parody of my actual name, the character name. That being said, obviously, he's a pretty awful person, and I hope that I'm not that. But sort of in terms of its own journey and the journey I was going through that influenced it, I did a feature before this called Carolyn and Jackie, and after that, you write a new feature, and Carolyn and Jackie did well enough to where I was advancing on a new level. So I was making another movie, not Newly Single, and I was working with an A-list actress for the first time in my life, working at a higher budget than I worked at, and it was like a huge step for me. That movie fell apart literally days before we shot it, and then I cast another person who was also a great actress, and something very similar happened to that. And then that all culminated during a period where I wasn't working, and I lost my girlfriend at the time, and my life was sort of crumbling apart. And I really was honestly thinking about quitting the film business. And out of sort of a desperation, I just wrote a movie that took place in my apartment, that I could act in myself, not really because I was even aspiring to be an actor, but because I just thought it would be an experiment and nobody could drop out of it. So in that sense, it ended up, I was transitioning into this journey of almost giving up on filmmaking, and I think that I was in a very angry and self-destructive space. So in a fanciful way, I wrote a character that was very destructive. So I think that in that sense, it's about the journey of transitioning from one thing to another. Ultimately, through this film and what I'm doing next, I've returned back to filmmaking. I don't know if the character in this movie, well, it's left sort of ambiguous, and he probably is ending in a darker place than I personally am. But in that sense, I think it's just reminiscent of any journey that we all experience, especially to now, because the world is drastically changing so much right now that I think a lot of people probably are experiencing changes in careers, and also, the changes we've had in gender roles right now have been so drastic that I think a lot of people are reimagining what they do in their life based on what they may have thought they were going to do when they were a child, or even 5 or 10 years ago.
And I wanted to ask, the same thing goes for your film in a way. The film is very powerful. It's loaded with emotions, with strong emotions, not just light ones. And so where does this come from? If you can share a little bit also the space you were in when you developed the film, and what went through your mind, when you felt the need to tell the story.
I like to I like journeys. I mean, even if I'm static, and I believe more like life is about it, going back and forth. And I like it's not I like, but I believe that there's this in between area that you cannot escape. So all the time you're in, out, in, out. So for me, it was interesting to write a character that is constantly going back and forth in her inner voice and in her outer voice. That really we sometimes mix which one is in or which one is out. And I like these ambiguous or these areas I find fruitful. So, and also to make it literally a journey helped me. And a train journey even helped me more because it takes 16 hours. You have time to see, to listen, to observe, to feel, to interfere, to take part of something very dramatic. But so I needed that time, I think. That's maybe we are too fast. I needed time to stop and have a look. So journeys and stations really helped me.
There's another very interesting aspect about your films that, as you correctly said before, for example, your character is very self-destructive. Probably is driven by the need for something. He's pursuing something, and that leads to the self-destruction that we see in the film. But in both films, we see this need for the lust, the need for something that is not very defined in a way, that it's not very clarified, because even if we think about the dating, there's no understanding of what actually he's looking for every time he dates a different woman, and it's just what is it that he really need. And the running in the beginning, I go back to the running scene because I think it's a very powerful scene, opening scene, and already tells I don't want to say everything about the film, but almost. So it's a very beautiful scene, and this running, not going anywhere, not stopping, and just sweating and crossing the roads, and in the darkness of the night with the image mirrored on the windows or on the glasses, on the cars, and he feels very lost. So that's a beautiful scene that I go back to because I would like also to talk about the search for something. So what is it that you, for example, in first person while you were writing the film, were looking for, and what do you think? Because I think this film really resonates globally, worldwide, not just in the US or just in the Western world. Like, resonates globally with people, as you said, who are looking for a new job, looking for a new career, or looking for a new love, or a new self, also a new identity.
Right. Well, I appreciate you saying that. So it's it is there's been this thing that's happened with globalism recently. So like if you what is that surge? And there's like that angst, and it's really for nothing. It's self-created. That being said, it's something that's also very American. I think if you look at America post, World War II, you certainly see that angst and like the searching for some sort of ambiguous career, self-affirmation, so much in 70s cinema, right? And then even when I was a kid, you would go to places like Europe or you would go to Asia to sort of escape that. You would go and you would see like, in contrast to America, there's such tight-knit relationships with family, and there's a different value, and this endless consumerism or searching towards something that is unattainable is somewhere else, not in America, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's just the way the world is now. The world has just become a lot more American. There is just such a level of globalism now that even coming at a place here like Tallinn, which is completely beautiful and so different than America, but there are very few actual products that are any different. So I can't say if that's better or worse. I can say that Newly Single certainly is a manifestation of the underlying tensions and frustrations that have to do with surviving in this world. It does specifically deal with some of the frustrations in like the male-female identity, but I think that ultimately it's the same. We are in a world that's a lot more populated than it ever was, and we seem to be very focused on an ideal that probably is ultimately not only unobtainable, but just silly.
And in something useful as well, we have the journey, but what is it that pushes the main character to go on this journey? Like, why would she really want to go back and meet the old friends after all this time? What is it that there's got to be something that is missing in order to go back in time? And while doing this journey, what is it, the empathy that this character has with all the people that she meets in the train, or with the stories that she meets? And related to that, how much do you see this empathy and this search for something in the past or in the present also in society? How much do you see that around you, or the youth or the people around you?
Well, actually, there is, in the film, we don't know the reason. We are talking about the 2 days of this actress. And there can be, what I imagine is more than one reason. It can be. I mean, I don't say this is it. It could be a lot of reasons. It can be just maybe a simple break she needed with her boyfriend, it could be. Or maybe she is tired of taking this subject so serious that maybe it was too much burden on her. Oh, no, I never go to my anniversary dinners with my high schools. Maybe this was too much, too big deal. And sometimes you don't need to something very big to happen to break these glasses. Sometimes the glass just breaks, and if you just go out and say, oh, that it's not that.
Not so bad.
It's not so bad, or it's not so difficult as you imagine. So I don't search neither in cinema nor in life. I don't search for big bombs to something happens and change your life. I never read a book that changed my life. I read a lot of books that colored my life, but the same with cinema. So she has a lot of reasons. And also, I think this train journey, the friend was quite smart to use it to convince her. Because for this character, it's fun. I mean, 16 hours, night train, and the trains are quite nice in Turkey, You can have your little room, little table, and why not? And then about empathy, and yeah, I think empathy and curiosity are quite entangled. I don't know the word.
Intertwined.
Yes, intertwined in life and in here. I think that she cannot help her curiosity, and maybe she doesn't even want to. But and also, when you're curious, you become less judging. I mean, you get in contact with people to understand them, not to judge them. You have a lot of questions, and you are more after questions rather than answers, And the less answers you're after, I think the more empathetic the life can be, because that's not the point. So even maybe going to this dinner, I mean, she is not going there to get an answer, but as I say, maybe breaking the ice can be, a glass could help. And plus, after this stop, because it's spoiler we don't say now, but after this nice afternoon in the house of Yavuz, let's say, she had another big reason to go to dinner. Maybe before she could escape. I mean, you never know. Maybe she goes to that city and she gives up at the end. That could be quite normal. But after this visit to Yavuz and this nice long afternoon, she had the duty to go there, because Yavuz also, she went there in the name of Yavuz, you know. Kind of a scene I see like a Last Supper without the Jesus. So Leyla had to go to that dinner for the sake of Yavuz as well, which gave me a better reason to go to dinner. So that's why Leyla goes there.
When I think of your films, as I said, very different in topic and also in terms of style and how to approach the subjects. But it really feels like both your films have a great focus on the unexpected twists and turns that a life can take in the everyday life, like in just a generic, and is just enough to go out there and challenge yourself, just open up to kind of see what's around you, and you will find out, in your case, some very funny and interesting circumstances, let's say, but also some very deep and strong and
Heavy responsibilities.
yes, exactly,
like life and death.
yes. So I see these two films have that in common, and I really enjoyed on different levels watching the films because of that. It really makes you think a lot about life, and even when taking it as a more light subject, there's as you said, it's a dark comedy, so there's also like the other side of the medal where you can really stop for a second and think and see yourself, whether it's you're in a pursuit for a new job or dating or whatever it may be. There's a very strong connection between the audience and the films. I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate, for example, on the style of the film. Has it always been in your mind to make it as a dark comedy, or in order to, because as I understand it's also a subject that is very close to you, as you said before, you were going through some similar feelings or phase in your life, and has it always been that style that you wanted to use, or have you ever thought about going just drama? And
yeah, so it was always intended to be a dark comedy. I can say, though, that this movie, in comparison to my first movie and short films I made, it was quite difficult in post to find that tone. Carolyn and Jackie, my first feature, it definitely has comedic moments, but it's very much a drama. So this, in terms of going into a dark comedy, it was a new space for me. But like, in truly it being a dark comedy, there's an incredibly fine line between both a drama and a comedy, but also in terms of it taking itself too earnestly. The character is a very self-important person, and I'm playing it myself, and I'm trying to allow the audience to understand that I'm making fun of myself, and it's okay to laugh at him and laugh at me. But it was quite difficult in the post process the first cut of the movie, not like a rough cut, but the first actually like finished cut of the movie, I'd say was far darker than the cut you've seen, and it was a lot more serious. And I think that myself, I don't really like, I don't ever do test screenings. I never have done a test screening. Like tonight will be the first time an audience ever sees this movie. But in terms of, I'll show obviously the producers of the film, that relationship was very collaborative. And in showing the producers of the film, they also always understood it was a comedy. So when we all watched that first more dramatic cut, we all thought it was funny. But then in showing it to other filmmakers and other close people I trusted who had never seen it, didn't know what the movie was about, I realized like people didn't understand it was a comedy at all, and they thought it was just a very serious and earnest and very self-important movie that I was making about like some version of myself, which was completely wrong. So in terms of like the movie that you saw that has the music, for instance, it's like very over the top. It's almost like a Henry Mancini movie. It's like reminiscent of the 1960s almost in terms of score. That was something that I hadn't intended on originally doing, and I was able to introduce that to sort of like make it clear. And like, for instance, the running scene that you've talked about recurringly today, that's something that wasn't originally in the script. I had that footage, but in terms of like putting that right up the front with that very over-the-top orchestral music with the very like 1960s style titles, it was saying, it's allowing the audience to know like instantaneously that you're supposed to be laughing at this. It's not so self-important. And then you're able to cut directly from that into the first scene in the movie that is very self-important. So you're able to know, you know, it's like, it's okay to not take his side. So yeah, that's
Yeah, that's why I was interested, and I'm glad you brought up the music. So I wanted to ask a question about that as well, because the music is really, really important. And like, it does a really good job also in leading the audience also. And I asked you about the drama because it does feel like there's a very good mix between, you know, the dark aspects of the life of this character and the more funny aspects where we can laugh at. And it really feels like you managed to do the balance between these two without, you know, leaning too much towards one or the other. And it makes you really enjoy the film without feeling too guilty at the same time. You know, that you're laughing at the character and like, oh my God, I'm laughing at a poor guy who's having these issues with dating and stuff. I'm such an evil person. You know?
If he's laughing as well, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. So you feel good in the end, yeah. Okay, so we are arrived to the end. I would like to ask you just if you have some final words about the film, if I forgot to mention something or to bring up something and you would like to add something about your films.
No,
No?
I think we just said a lot. Just
Especially
let the
because-
movie speak.
Especially because I don't, especially in this case, it's really, really hard to talk too much about the films because, well, in your case, there are some scenes that I would love to reference, but then you spoil them, so I won't. I'm just gonna let the audience go to the cinema and watch the film and enjoy the scenes because there are some really, really funny scenes that I really enjoyed and some very touching scenes as well. And same thing goes for you, like the characters. There are some characters that I cannot speak about because then I give out a little bit too much about the story and I don't want to ruin the twists and turns that you have in the dramatic structure of the film. So I don't know how far I can go with the details. So it's better if we stop it right here. And I'm just going to remind everybody that we have Newly Single, which is playing tonight at 9 p.m. at the Cosmos Cinema, and it's the world premiere. So as you said correctly before, this is the first time that the film's been screened anywhere. And then at 6 p.m., again at the Cosmos, we have Something Useful, and it's an international premiere, so it's never been screened outside of Turkey. So once again, unless some Estonians have been in Turkey lately, it should be the first time. So I'm super happy to have you guys here, and thank you so much for trusting us with your films, for giving us your films for the competition, and good luck and best of luck for the competition and for the screenings and everything.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.